Okay, so we're going to be rating 5 flashpoints around the world. And the five I'm doing, and kind of like what I think is in order of their importance, is Yemen, Libya, North Korea, Syria, and Ukraine. So, as far as our own involvement and things that could affect us greatly, and that I think really the most geopolitical dynamite is. That's kind of what I'm looking at here. So I think, look, Yemen's a problem, but I don't consider it geopolitical dynamite right now. And I will get to Iran towards the end, but I don't consider it a flashpoint at the moment. But again, Yemen is a low flashpoint, I think, at the moment. But because of the Iranian connection and what goes on with that boogeyman, that could change. All right. Then we have the other, Libya. It's a wreck. Russia apparently is in little conversations there, and as soon as they started, all of a sudden NATO gets interested. So I really, it's a flashpoint, but it's the goal was achieved. The place was wrecked. It won't be the threat that it was. Its gold was looted, and it now has a central bank. Job accomplished. All right. So there's, there might be some stuff about who's got whose arms there, but again, the place, it's a dump, unfortunately, courtesy of NATO. North Korea. Russia and China are really containing this very well, and the United States is bringing its thing over there. And I guess the 25th, is when Kim Jong-un is planning to do another test, and that's really when the carrier task force, I guess they're going to get there a day or two beforehand, and everybody's trailing them, especially Russia and China. That'll probably draw the most eyeballs. I think North Korea has probably the biggest optics for what looks like is a flashpoint. Then we have Syria. And General Mattis recently said something about Syria where there can be no denying that there are chemical weapons in Syria, and that Syria better make sure that these weapons don't get used again. And when I listened to that, I read it. I read the part of it. And what did I write? I wrote, he's lawyering. Okay. Mattis is lawyering. And what I mean by that is we all know that there are chemical weapons in Syria because large parts of Syria are not controlled by the Syrian government. And everybody knows that really every time there's been weapons use, it always gets tied to the, what I consider to be the bad guys in Syria, who are the ones who are opposing Assad. So they are the ones, all good, valuable, forensic, honest evidence all points out that it was always the terrorists basically that were involved. I don't even want to grant them, these are not rebels. These are terrorists, and many of them are not Syrian. If you're not Syrian, you're not a rebel. You're a terrorist. So Mattis kind of gets to make a claim like we know chemical weapons are in Syria. Now, an interesting thing is that the air base that they recently bombed in Syria, when the weapons were being cleaned out of Syria, that part of Syria was under firm ISIS control. It wasn't under Assad's control in 2013. So there's, it's kind of hard to say you need to get all your weapons out of the country when part of your country's been taken over by a hostile force and they have what you would love to give up if only you could get in there and give it away. So Mattis can say this. He can say, we know there's chemical weapons in Syria. But again, in what context? Yeah, we give you that, brother. But who's got them? and when they do go off, who's responsible for why they went off? And this whole kind of thing where maybe I mean they might there's a lot of games being played here. So this is why there's so much forensic examination to do. Now I depend on a lot of the reports I read to do certain kinds of journalistic forensics. I do language forensics in a lot of times, and that's often what I'm saying is Mattis is lawyering here. I mean, when he's saying we know there are chemical weapons in Syria, I would say I would have to agree with him. But who controls them? And that isn't clear. So there's this kind of thing is just like, okay, they're in your country, and then it's holding Assad accountable. But they just said that the Syrian government better not get involved with these weapons again. So it might even mean like, don't bomb, you better have better intelligence and don't bomb these depots. I have no idea. I mean, there's a lot of obfuscation here, and trying to coming down with a real clear line is not possible at this time. But being able to see certain things and maybe rule certain things out, I think, is certainly worth a stab at. And that's what I do here with the Mystic Brew. So that's the Syria flashpoint. Number one on my list of real geopolitical flashpoints is Ukraine. And the main reason I place Ukraine as the most dangerous flashpoint is because it's under the control of NATO, the West, and the United States. This is a nation under the control of the mischief makers. We'll call them mischief makers, okay? And it's not because I do want to get. I mean, there is good and evil, and I really think that what is being done in Ukraine by NATO and whatever is evil. Okay, so I'll just there's that disclaimer. So these evil mischief makers are the reason why I think Ukraine is a real flashpoint. Not to mention it's on the border with Russia, and the other thing is we're not hearing a lot about there, even though occasionally I read some things and there's buildups and there's all that NATO buildup, up in Estonia, Latvia. They're trying to make Poland dig a canal that would allow ships to not have to transverse Russian water, and the Polish people are not interested in it at all. Matter of fact, they feel it's going to destroy the nice little seaports they have there. It's completely unnecessary. This is just so that the Polish ships or a NATO ally doesn't have to go through Russian waters that they're never bothered for going through anyway. See, so much of this stuff is about making a problem where there are none. But the whole thing is, we want to stay out of Russian waters. Why? Because everybody knows Russia's bad. And then the rest of us will go, oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess billions of dollars in disrupting a nice seaport because of the evil Russians certainly makes sense. Most people aren't buying it. There is not a whole lot of logic to these arguments. So, I mean, more and more people are being expected to believe stupider and stupider things. And the propaganda is now dropping below even the lower intelligence levels of many people. So they're catching on. So I mean, this desperation, this we bet, Trump is in, us globalists better act, and act in every way, including trying to capture him. A chessboard, you try and capture the king. So Ukraine, I think, is the biggest flashpoint. So my big five, so my rating of the five, in my opinion, of what could really stir up the world quickly, and where is the possibility for the most? Yemen at 5, Libya at 4, North Korea at 3, ultimately, even though I think the optics make it look like it's close to 1 or 2. Syria as another real number 2, and again, because Syria is an ally of Russia and Iran. Okay, this gets much bigger. They're much more committed to Syria than they are to Libya or Yemen. So again, it's these commitments. And who's committed to North Korea? I guess we're going to find out. So now the one that didn't make the list, but is really a potential huge flashpoint is Iran. Now, again, we run it. Now, one of the problems with Iran is, okay, we're going to run into, again, lawyering. And again, this lawyering comes from General Mattis. Okay? And that lawyering goes with Iran harbors terrorists. Okay? Now, the thing is, the lawyering here is who has been designated a terrorist. There's an official globalist terrorist list. And if you're on that list, you're a bad guy. Now, if you haven't, and then we have the other thing, I think it's called the MKO. I don't know what that's an acronym for, but that is an Iranian organization that Iran considers terrorist, and much of the intel that our people get is from the MKO. So again, we'll see like in Syria, where the Western press is relying on the white helmets, who have been kind of busted as an NGO, and just, Twitter accounts and things like that. So we see this really sloppy journalism as sources. And then again, a group that Iran considers terrorists, domestic terrorists, is basically who the Pentagon and the West is working with for information about what's going inside Iran. So obviously, if Iran thinks these people are terrorists, there's bad blood between MKO and the Iranian government. So do we really expect the MKO to give our guys the kind of information that reflects the world accurately and unbiasedly? Of course not. These people are at each other's throats. These people declare each other enemies. That's MKO in Iran, and MKO is providing us their stuff. I'm not sure which organization that Iran doesn't consider terrorist and it supports that the West considers terrorist. So by their definition, okay, people that Iran considers terrorists are actually their intelligence sources, and then people that Iran thinks are freedom fighters and are supporting, the West considers terrorists. So Iran supporting what they feel is in their own interests is now called they're supporting terrorism. Now, should that very group was removed from the terrorist list, they wouldn't be able to state emphatically in a lawyerly way that Iran sponsors terrorism. The rest of us might look at what these groups are doing and going, we support Iran, but we're not getting that. We're getting the narrative about all this. Okay, the narrative is the story that they want you to believe, and this narrative often is built up on narratives that have been continuing or may have been that are there waiting to be built on. This is the narrative. The news that's on the mainstream news is a strategy, and the daily news is tactical. So you need to see all this stuff, and now. Just so I really consider, things, Iran's going to be Iran. Okay, so it's going to do what it thinks it's right. It's going to be guided by what it thinks is wisdom. And it will always be a belligerent peacock. And as far as I'm concerned, you're allowed to be a belligerent peacock. Just don't come poop in our skies. I mean, come on, so what? You can tell if you ever go to Press TV and see some of the official statements by many of the people in the Iranian cabinet. They're very often bellicose. Zarif, he's the one who dealt with Lavrov. Oh, he's smooth. He's a gem. He's one of those world-class statesmen. I mean, really, the two world-class statesmen in the world today are Zarif out of Iran and Lavrov out of Russia. I mean, these guys are gentlemen. They're well-spoken. They don't say bizarre things. Now, sometimes Western media thinks they say bizarre things because they speak the truth, and the truth is a very bizarre thing to be said in Western media. I mean, maybe they'll tell the truth. If a certain celebrities had plastic surgery, they might get some of those details right. Now, I'm just going to close this up with a story that's starting to come out. Again, at least on the internet and a few places I'm reading. And I think it's part of the Kabuki theater. Because again, what we saw in Syria was actually quite a bit of coordination between the Russians and the United States. Matter of fact, there may have been a lot deeper coordination. Those missing tomahawks might have been part of an assessment of both sides' ordnance and defense, and everybody was a winner. It was just like, let's just go for it, man. We get the intel, and that's working together. So I think we're going to continue to hear quite a bit of bellicosity from official Russian sources and official American sources, and I think they're going to the militaries are going to be quietly working together, because that's really where it matters. Let the diplomats talk. Let the diplomats act like soldiers and fire all the volleys, and let the soldiers act like diplomats. Okay, that'll throw everybody. But there's anybody who might have known about the Donald Cook, and you might not. There was a destroyer, an Aegis class destroyer in the Black Sea a few years ago, and the Sukhoi flew over it and shut down all its things. It's an old story now. If you haven't heard it, I'm sorry. You can just kind of Donald Cook Black Sea incident. And there's a Russian electronics suite, we'll call it. It's called Kibiny. Khibiny. 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 And it supposedly was what it did when it kind of opened that software suite, or that software hardware or electronic warfare onto the Donald Cook, and it was shut down. Now, part of this is supposedly that they were willing to agree with an Iranian. Now, there's this Iranian, I forget his first name, his last name is Keshi, and he has the Magrav technology. His first name might come to me, but everybody knows him as Kesh or Keshi. And supposedly he had answers to the problems of the world, including energy production, and he also had like a defense system that would render any like kind of like the world-changing ordnance obsolete and basically inert. And supposedly, and he offered to a few countries around the world, and apparently there was an executive order by Barack Obama that was signed on April 23rd, 2012, that kind of made it forbidden to work with Magrav technology, at least at whatever level that Keshi was offering it. But as far as we know, Russia took them up on it, and this is actually the technology behind it. So again, we see this is an Iranian scientist who invented this, and it's probably, if you recall, years ago, the Iranians brought down one of the most sophisticated drones. They landed it drone. They didn't shoot out of the sky. They made it land, and that was supposedly kind of like the beginning of this technology, and it's apparently been growing. So that's okay. So that's just I didn't want to just have the top 5. I also have some more conversation around that. So thank you all for listening to Mystic Brew. I hope the things that I share with you make some sense, maybe open some doors for you, and you might even get your own ahas and put them in the comment section and share them with me. This is open source intelligence, and what we do is we share. And our intuition sometimes, we take the dots, we take the data we have, and then we kind of just allow ourselves to kind of play with that a little bit and see what kind of things kind of fill into the gaps. You might be surprised. All right. So God bless you all. Take care of yourselves and stay sane, because we need it.